Zoe, Grandma can't hear well, so let's greet her loudly, okay? Zoe and I walked through the gate of my in-laws' house. Hello, Mary. It's been a while.
Hello.
Mary, my mother-in-law, looked tense and stiff. I noticed her hearing aids, which gave me some relief, thinking we could probably have a normal conversation. She glanced at Zoe, who was standing quietly next to me, but then quickly looked away. Zoe, still holding my hand, squeezed it tightly and took a deep breath.
Hi, Grandma. It's so nice to finally see you.
Zoe's loud, clear voice echoed in the entrance hall like a cheerleader at a sports event. I assumed it was because I had just told her to speak loudly. But it was likely also because she was excited and happy to finally meet her grandmother. I thought Mary, even with her hearing loss, would surely hear this. I was looking forward to her reaction. But to my surprise, Mary suddenly covered her ears and crouched down. Mary? I approached to rub her back, seeing her pale face and chattering teeth, but she pushed my hand away, twisting her body in rejection. Calm down, Mary. I'm sorry we startled you. This is your granddaughter, Zoe. She's been looking forward to meeting you. I tried to explain to calm her down, but Mary remained in a panic, stubbornly turning her back to Zoe.
Get away from this child.
She screamed and ran into the back room. Zoe and I stood there, stunned, watching Mary. Zoe was obviously shocked, and tears welled up in her eyes.
Mom, why?
All I could do was silently hold Zoe as she clung to me. My name is Emily, and I'm 34 years old. I live with my husband Kevin and our daughter Zoe.
Daddy, listen. Yesterday, 2 butterflies flew into my classroom.
Zoe's chatter during breakfast was as lively as ever.
Oh, really? Did you catch them?
Kevin, sipping his coffee, listened to Zoe's story.
No, it was during class, so we all had to sit still. But then both butterflies landed on the teacher's head.
Zoe giggled at the memory. Kevin looked at her curiously.
Did the teacher notice?
Nope, didn't notice. So, we all told him. But before he could check in the mirror, the butterflies flew away.
Kevin, not quite getting why it was so funny, glanced at me for help. Zoe's teacher is built like a boxing coach, big and tough, and supposedly really scary.
But yesterday, he looked like he was wearing a cute bow on his head. And guess what he said? I guess even butterflies are into me.
Kevin and I watched Zoe laugh heartily, both of us smiling at her joy. Zoe, who turned 9 this year, is a bright, energetic girl. She has lots of friends and seems to enjoy school every day.
Oh, by the way, butterflies aren't counted as 1 or 2. You say 1 head or 2 heads.
What? Really? That's so cool, Dad. I'm totally telling my teacher when I get to school.
Kevin looked pleased with Zoe's compliment. In our house, breakfast was the one precious time we could all be together. Both of us work, but Kevin's job is especially busy, and he usually doesn't get home until after 9 p.m. He often comes back after Zoe has already gone to bed. He even works on weekends a lot, so the 3 of us only go out together maybe once a month. That's why we cherished our family time at breakfast.
Mom, can I go to Sophia's house after school today?
Sure. Oh, can you take these cookies with you? Make sure to tell Sophia's mom, thank you for everything.
Okay.
Now in the 4th grade, Zoe no longer goes to after-school care this year. She often plays at her friend's house nearby. I can work without being anxious. Though I couldn't give her a sibling, she's blessed with good friends. And with her outgoing personality and natural ability to make friends with anyone, Zoe doesn't seem to feel lonely. I'm home. When I got home that evening, Zoe came rushing to the door with an even bigger smile than usual.
Welcome back. Mom, guess what? I got this from Sophia's grandma.
Oh, what a cute handkerchief.
Her grandma came to visit from Florida.
Now that she mentioned it, I remembered Sophia's mom saying she was from Florida. She had told me it was hard to go back home because it was so far away. Her grandma really came all the way here.
Grandma was supposed to be at the house already, so we ran home from school the whole way, except at the traffic lights. It was as tough as a marathon.
I could just picture the two of them running with their backpacks bouncing out of breath. Sophia must have been so happy, right?
Yeah. Her grandma was super nice.
Suddenly, Zoe's face looked a little sad. Zoe, what's wrong? She grips the handkerchief tightly.
I want to see my grandma.
I couldn't respond right away, so I gently patted Zoe's head as she looked down. I was raised by a single mom, and she passed away when I was 22. As for Kevin's dad, he passed away when Kevin was 20. So the only grandparent Zoe has is Kevin's mom, Mary. Mary lives about 2 hours away by car. If we wanted to, we could visit anytime, but Zoe has never met her grandmother. Like I've told you before, Grandma doesn't hear well, so she's not comfortable meeting people. Zoe had mentioned several times before that she wanted to meet her grandmother.
All my friends go to their grandparents' houses for Christmas. Grandparents' Day is when you thank your grandma and grandpa, right?
As Zoe grew older, she started to question why, even though she had a grandmother, she wasn't able to meet her. I had only met Mary a few times before Zoe was born. Mary already had hearing loss at that time, and her attitude toward me was always distant. Does she hate me? When I first went to introduce myself before getting married, I was completely disheartened by her cold demeanor. I hadn't had the best relationship with my mom, so I wasn't confident that I could get along with Mary either.
No, that's not it. Ever since she lost her hearing, she's been like that with everyone, even our family.
Kevin let out a deep sigh.
She used to be a cheerful person, but after I moved out, she started acting strange all of a sudden. We took her to the hospital, and they said she had sudden hearing loss and was emotionally unstable because of it.
I understood she didn't hate me, but I couldn't help worrying about how things would go from then on.
Just give her space. She said she prefers being alone.
If that's what Mary wanted, we ended up visiting my in-laws only once a year for the holidays, even though they lived within driving distance. And that was before we had kids. When are you going to take Zoe to see Mary? Maybe inviting her to a family party or something. I assumed that no one could resist the joy of meeting their grandchild. I had convinced myself of that. Do you think Mary will smile when she sees Zoe? I was sure that once she saw such a cute granddaughter, her heart would open up. While I was feeling so cheerful, Kevin spoke to me apologetically.
Actually, my mom doesn't like kids.
What? I couldn't process his unexpected words right away. Isn't it different with grandchildren? People always say they'd do anything for them. Surely, seeing her own grandchild, especially a baby, would stir up feelings of affection, right? But Kevin lowered his gaze and quietly shook his head.
She told me not to bring a baby, even after her grandchild was born.
Hearing Kevin's words, it felt like I'd been hit over my head.
Sorry, don't take it the wrong way. I couldn't get all the details, but apparently my mom has some kind of trauma. So, it's not that she dislikes her grandchild. She just doesn't like kids.
I could tell how carefully Kevin was choosing his words, trying not to hurt me, Mary, or Zoe. I didn't know when Mary had said that to him, but it was clear Kevin had been carrying it alone, not wanting to hurt me. I felt guilty. I see. I'm sorry, I had no idea. Okay, let's have the party with just the three of us. Zoe, let's celebrate with Daddy and Mommy. I acted as cheerful as possible, so my anxiety wouldn't rub off on Zoe, who was looking up at me with her big eyes.
Mom, you've met Grandma before, right? What's she like? Does she look like me?
Zoe stared at me with those big eyes. The last time I saw her was before you were born, and we barely talked. So, honestly, I still don't know what she's like. I'm sorry. I realized it had been 9 years since I'd last seen Mary.
But every year, she sends me money for Christmas, right? So, Grandma must be a really nice person.
Yes. Ever since Zoe was born, Mary had sent not just a card, but also a little money each Christmas by registered mail. Since phone calls were difficult due to her hearing loss, I would send a thank you email. But after Zoe learned to write, I had her send thank you letters. We never got a reply. But Mary's consistent Christmas gifts made Zoe quietly feel her grandmother's warmth. You're right. She must be kind. I agreed, hoping to reassure Zoe. Normally, this would be enough to ease Zoe's desire to meet her grandmother, but not this time. After meeting Sophia's grandmother, Zoe's determination to meet her own grew even stronger.
Let's go see Grandma.
I'll talk to Daddy about it, okay? I wanted to grant Zoe's wish. And though it was late, I also wanted to build a relationship with Mary myself. With that decision, I asked Kevin to reach out to Mary.
Mom said it's okay.
5 days later, Kevin said this while patting Zoe's head.
We're going to visit her this Sunday.
Zoe's face lit up, and Kevin and I both felt relieved.
Yay! Oh, let's bring a present. Do you think Grandma will like it?
For so long, Mary had avoided meeting her grandchild. So why the change of heart? It was Zoe's words that triggered it.
What would you like for your birthday?
When Kevin asked Zoe, who was celebrating her birthday this month, she answered, I want to see Grandma. She wanted it so badly. Both Kevin and I realized how much this meant to her. We had to make this happen. Kevin worked on convincing Mary every day, and finally she gave in.
Daddy, what does Grandma like?
The morning before their first meeting, Zoe, eating more than usual, asked Kevin this question.
What does she like? Let's see.
Kevin struggled to remember what his own mom liked, and Zoe was half amused, half annoyed.
Okay, how about dogs or cats? Which does she like better?
She used to draw a little cat next to my name when I was a kid, so probably cats.
What's her favorite fruit?
She used to make strawberry jam, so I'd say strawberries.
Does she like sunny or rainy days?
I think she likes the rain. She used to have a garden full of flowers, and she'd always smile, saying the rain made the plants happy.
Whoa. Zoe's excellent questions were revealing a side of Mary I didn't know, and even parts of her that Kevin had forgotten.
What's her favorite flower?
Well, why don't you ask Grandma directly when you see her next time?
Yeah, I will.
Zoe and Kevin smiled at each other. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about my late mom. What were her favorite things? All I could remember was her busy figure, rushing around doing housework and hurrying out the door. What was her favorite food? Her favorite sport? Her favorite color? I couldn't answer any of those with certainty. She was my only family, and yet I had avoided facing her, afraid to get close. I regretted that. I didn't want Zoe or Mary to have the same kind of regrets I did. I went to sleep hoping that tomorrow I would see lots of smiles from Zoe and Mary. With that thought in my heart, I drifted off to sleep.
I'm sorry. I'll call my mom and explain everything.
The next morning, Kevin rushed out the door in his suit, hurrying to work. It seemed there was an emergency, and he had to go in suddenly. I never imagined that after 9 years, Zoe and I would be the ones to visit Mary without Kevin. A wave of anxiety washed over me. But Zoe, showing no sign of concern, was efficiently getting her things ready.
I packed my handkerchief and hat. I've got a present for Grandma too. Mom, are you ready yet?
Just a second. If we face this together, we'll get through it. I repeated this to myself, straightening my posture so Zoe wouldn't sense my anxiety. 2 hours later. Look, there she is. Grandma's waiting for us. I spotted Mary, nervously glancing around outside her house, and felt a bit relieved. She looked thinner. Even from a distance, I could see that Mary, whom I hadn't seen in 9 years, had clearly aged. Then she looked in our direction and our eyes met, so I waved. But she quickly turned and rushed back into the house.
Grandma went inside.
Zoe, Grandma can't hear very well, so let's greet her loudly, okay? Regaining my composure, we walked through the gate of the house. Hello, Mary. It's been a while.
Hello.
Mary's expression was stiff, her face tense with nervousness. I noticed her hearing aids and felt relieved, thinking we could at least have a conversation. She glanced at Zoe, standing quietly beside me, but then quickly looked away. Zoe, holding my hand, squeezed it tightly and took a deep breath.
Hi, Grandma. I'm so happy to finally meet you.
Zoe's loud, clear voice rang out in the entrance hall like a cheerleader's shout at a sports event. She must have remembered that I told her to speak loudly. And I'm sure her excitement about finally meeting her grandmother added to the energy in her voice. Even with her hearing loss, Mary must have heard that. I eagerly awaited her reaction, but Mary blinked for a moment and suddenly crouched down, covering her ears. Mary? I moved closer, trying to rub her back, seeing her pale face and trembling body. But she pushed my hand away and twisted to reject my touch. Mary, please calm down. I'm sorry for startling you. This is Zoe, your granddaughter. She's been looking forward to meeting you. I tried to explain, hoping to calm her, but Mary remained in a panic, stubbornly turning her back to Zoe.
Get away from this child.
Mary shouted and ran into the back room. Zoe and I stood there, stunned, watching her. Tears quickly welled up in Zoe's eyes, clearly hurt by her grandmother's reaction on their first meeting. That was a terrible reaction for a first encounter. I wanted to shout at Mary, but it was obvious her condition wasn't something simple.
Mom, why?
Zoe clung to me, and all I could do was hold her in silence. I was sure Kevin didn't know Mary was in such a state. If he had known, he never would have let Zoe and me go to his mother's house alone. Even though it might hurt him to know the reality of his mother's situation, I knew I had to contact Kevin quickly. As I reached for my phone to call him, my eyes caught sight of a large present with a big red ribbon in front of the room where Mary had fled. Could that be a gift for Zoe? I hung up the phone before Kevin answered. Zoe, let me talk to Grandma. It'll be okay. I reassured her and approached the door to the room where Mary was hiding, knocking softly. Mary, you don't have to come out. I'd just like to talk to you for a moment if you don't mind. I spoke toward the door, though there was no response. As you know, my mom passed away 12 years ago. She was my only family, but I misunderstood her right up until the very end. My mom raised me alone after her divorce. She came home from work after 8 p.m. every night. I spent a lot of time alone, but no matter how busy she was, she always prepared dinner for me in the morning before she left for work. So, even though eating alone was lonely, I was lucky that I never had to wait with an empty stomach. When I got to high school, my mom started making me lunch every day. Her cold homemade meals were delicious, but for some reason, they also made me feel a strange sense of loneliness at times. She provided everything I needed, bought me the things I required, and even gave me spending money. But what I really wanted was her warmth. I wished she would ask me about school, and I wanted her to scold me when I got bad grades. I wanted her to notice when I was having trouble with my friends. But at home, she always sighed. She had always been a quiet person, but after it was just the two of us, it seemed like she had no interest in me at all. I thought, Mom must hate me. As I grew up, I began to avoid her. And as soon as I graduated from high school, I left home, feeling like I was running away. But a few years later, I got a call from her, and when I went to see her, she was lying in a hospital bed, thin and frail. The doctor said she had about a week left. That's when I finally spoke to her honestly. Why didn't you call me before it got this bad?
Because I didn't want to bother you.
She said, her face expressionless. You wouldn't have bothered me. We're family. And Mom, it must have been so hard for you, taking care of me all alone. I'm sorry. My voice started to tremble as I spoke, feeling hollow.
Yes, it was hard, but I could do it because I had you.
What? I was speechless, completely taken aback by her words.
I'm sorry I never had the energy to listen to you or even grant you one selfish request.
I thought you didn't care about me, that you hated me.
That's not true at all. I always wanted to talk to you more, even about little things. But I never had the time, and eventually, it became harder to start those conversations.
My mom smiled sadly. I didn't know it was like that. I had misunderstood everything.
When Emily left, I cried so much. I didn't know what I was supposed to live for anymore. But you know, it's surprising how people can manage on their own.
I remembered the email my mom sent me the day after I left home.
Why you live and who you live for. Those are very important questions in life.
At the time, I didn't understand what she meant by that email. She hardly ever emailed me, so why now of all times? Was she trying to say that now that I was gone, she could finally live for herself? I recalled how I twisted that message in my mind and ended up resenting her for it. But now, realizing how much my leaving had hurt her, I hated the way I had acted back then.
I'm sorry for all the trouble I caused, even at the end.
It wasn't trouble. I just wanted you to live longer. I had so much to tell you, so many places I wanted to go with you. My mom held my hand, which was trembling like a child's, her touch a little cold but gentle. The next day, she started to fade, slipping in and out of consciousness. 3 days later, she quietly passed away before my eyes. I was so afraid to face my family, and because of that fear, I lived with misunderstandings for years. In the end, we cleared things up, but I never got back the time I lost with my mom. That's something I deeply regret. Suddenly, I heard a faint rustling from inside the room. Mary must have come closer to the door. I continued speaking. I promised myself I would never have those kinds of regrets with my family again. I decided that if I ever had a family of my own, I would face them honestly. So, Mary, if there's anything on your mind, please talk to us. After a while, Mary, who had been silent, opened the door just a crack. You're not alone, Mary. If you're struggling with something, let us help you get through it. This was what I most wanted to convey to her. I had said everything I needed to, so now I waited for her response. Eventually, Mary slowly stepped out of the room. It's okay, take your time. I gently guided Mary, who was looking at me nervously, to a chair near the door and gave her a reassuring look.
17 years ago, there was a fire at my workplace.
Then Mary began to speak slowly, carefully choosing her words. She had been working part-time at an alternative school for children who couldn't attend regular school. Before the fire, she could hear perfectly and had loved being around children.
Even though some of the kids had trouble going to school, they were just normal kids, just a little more sensitive. I wanted them to know that even outside their families, there were people who cared about them.
Her work, which she had started after her own children were grown, had brought her so much joy.
But one day, the fire alarm went off out of nowhere.
The fire had started on the 6th floor of the building, where the alternative school was located. Looking up from the classroom window on the 2nd floor, they could see thick smoke rising.
Stay calm, everyone. We're going to evacuate, so follow me.
They had practiced this evacuation drill once a year, so as long as they followed it, everything would be fine. Although it was their first real emergency, Mary and the other adults remained calm, trying to reassure the 6 children present. However, the children, sensitive to changes, quickly reacted. One girl began to panic and started crying and screaming.
It's going to be okay. Let's walk quietly and head outside.
Mary tried to reassure her, but the girl struggled and fought, trying to break free from Mary's hold. The girl was in the 6th grade and was big for her age. She pushed Mary with all her strength, sending her crashing into the wall. As Mary doubled over in pain, the girl bolted toward the stairs.
Someone, please go after Zoe.
Coincidentally, the girl's name was Zoe, just like my daughter. At that moment, I realized something. Of course, Zoe hadn't been born yet at that time. But it was clear now that Mary's refusal to meet her granddaughter was connected to this incident. In the end, another teacher managed to get Zoe out safely, and everyone, both students and teachers, made it out without injury. It was Mary's first experience with such a traumatic event. Despite feeling overwhelmed with anxiety, Mary had done everything she could to protect the children, but the fire made her painfully aware of her own helplessness. She had always found joy in being relied on by the kids and watching them grow, and she thought this job was a perfect fit for her. But after the fire, she lost all her confidence.
My coworkers told me to reflect on the experience and use it to move forward, but I was under more stress than I realized.
After the fire, Mary started having nightmares every night. In the dreams, the children were running in terror from the flames. Help! It's so hot! The children's screams echoed, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't reach them. In fact, she would always wake up at the part where the firefighters saved her first, leaving her screaming outside the building. The nightmares became so unbearable that Mary began avoiding sleep altogether. Eventually, she felt dazed all the time, unable to tell if she was awake or dreaming.
I became so depressed that I couldn't face anyone, and the stress triggered my hearing loss. I had to quit my job, and my family started treating me like I was fragile.
Her family never treated Mary poorly. They were just careful and avoided asking too much about the fire or her hearing loss. Mary, on the other hand, hated being treated delicately, so she distanced herself from them instead of asking for help.
In the end, the fire was put out quickly, and nothing serious happened. No one was injured. So no one, except my psychiatrist, knows that I've been carrying this trauma.
What might seem minor to others can be a deeply significant event for the person who lived through it. But explaining that to others can be so hard. I thought back to my own experiences. I understand. You can explain the situation, but getting people to truly understand your feelings is much harder, isn't it? I wonder if I could have told my mom that I was lonely by myself at that time. What if I had said, "We don't need a fancy dinner. Let's just sit and talk instead"? Maybe we could have had a better relationship. But even when you muster the courage to open up, if the other person doesn't understand or misinterprets you, it can lead to deeper despair. And when that person is someone you want most to understand your family, the despair is even greater. Maybe that's why I couldn't be honest with my mom about how I felt. Perhaps it's because our closest family members are the ones we distance ourselves from the most.
The truth is, I always wanted to meet my granddaughter, but when I heard her name, that scene flashed back. When Kevin told me her name, I just yelled, "I hate kids. Don't bring her here."
So that was it. I glanced around the room and noticed 10 presents lined up by the window, each with a red ribbon. They all had the same wrapping as the gift we saw earlier in front of the room. Are those? Mary followed my gaze and gave a small, shy smile.
They're all birthday presents for Zoe. I've prepared them every year, thinking, maybe this year, but I could never work up my courage. The one on the left is a pair of tiny socks for when she was born. The one next to it is an apron for when she turned 1 and for her second birthday.
For the last 9 years, we had accepted the idea that Mary simply didn't like children, but now I realized she had been struggling alone all this time. Even though I had resolved to face my family, I hadn't truly done so, and now I regretted it deeply. I'm so sorry for not knowing any of this.
No, it's my fault for not saying anything.
Now that Mary had shared her trauma, she looked lighter and more at ease than she had just minutes ago.
Thank you for telling me your story, and thank you for listening to mine. Because of you, I feel ready to face my family and my own trauma.
I haven't fully moved on from my past either. But let's face it together and overcome it as a family. I held out my hand, and Mary grasped my hand firmly and gently with a warm, wrinkled hand.
Mom. Grandma.
At that moment, Zoe peeked hesitantly around the door.
Can I come in?
When Mary looked at her, she nodded, albeit nervously.
Grandma, can we talk? I love cats too. And I love strawberries. I drew a picture for you. It's you, surrounded by all the things you love, smiling. I asked Daddy, and I tried to make it look like you.
Thanks to Zoe's natural ability to make friends with anyone, Mary's expression softened immediately. Mary reached out her free hand to Zoe. Then, she held Zoe's hand as well.
Thank you, Zoe. You're already 9, aren't you? I'll tell you everything.
Mary, gathering her courage, began explaining her trauma and hearing loss to Zoe in a way she could understand.
I'm sorry for scaring you, Grandma.
Zoe, tears welling in her eyes, apologized, saying that she had reminded Mary of something painful by greeting her so loudly.
I just overreacted, that's all. And it's only because that little girl who panicked during the fire had the same name, Zoe. But you didn't do anything wrong.
Mary gently pulled Zoe into a hug. Zoe, what do you think those are? I pointed to the presents by the window.
Oh, there was one in front of the door too. Grandma, what are they?
Mary smiled shyly.
They're all for you, Zoe.
What? Really?
Zoe's eyes went wide with surprise as she looked back and forth between Mary and the presents. She had never imagined they were for her.
They're things I meant to give you over the years, but now they're mostly useless. You don't need baby socks or an apron for eating anymore.
Mary laughed, a little embarrassed, and Zoe hugged her tightly.
Grandma, I wish we could have come sooner. I'm sorry for making you wait.
You don't have to apologize, Zoe. It was just a misunderstanding on our part. I'm sorry.
You all did nothing wrong. I'm the one who didn't say anything. I'm sorry.
The three of us exchanged glances and suddenly burst out laughing.
We're all apologizing out of kindness.
Kindness overload. What a beautiful phrase. I felt moved by Zoe's sensitivity, and her presence filled me with strength. With this family, I was certain we could gently heal from the past and move forward. Just then, my phone rang.
Sorry I missed your call. Is everything okay?
It was Kevin. He had taken the time to call back after I had hung up the phone after about 3 rings earlier. I put the phone on speaker. Right now, we're having a kindness overload.
That's a relief to hear. What a wonderful phrase.
Kevin replied, making both Mary and Zoe smile. I'll tell you more when I get home.
Okay. Be safe on the way back. Can you tell Mom I'll come next time too? And, if possible, ask her to make hamburgers?
Got it. Kevin had no idea he was on speaker. Hearing his slightly embarrassed voice, Mary nodded with tears in her eyes. He says so.
My boy has always loved hamburgers. But you know, making hamburgers can be a bit of a hassle, right? He used to throw a fit whenever he wanted them, even when I was busy.
Though she was a bit embarrassed, Mary was clearly happy to hear her son's request. Well, Mary, your hamburgers are so amazing that Kevin doesn't even ask for them at home anymore.
Is that so?
Mary, would you teach me how to make them sometime?
If you'd like. This feels like one of those daughter-in-law and mother-in-law moments, doesn't it?
With our hearts now open to each other, we enjoyed a light-hearted conversation. Before we knew it, it was time to leave.
Here, it's a little early, but happy 10th birthday.
Mary handed Zoe the present that had been sitting by the door.
Thank you, Grandma. Can I open it?
Of course. I hope you like it.
Zoe's eyes sparkled with excitement, while Mary watched her nervously. It was such a heartwarming sight.
Wow. It's so cute.
Seeing Zoe jump for joy at the gift, Mary breathed a sigh of relief.
Is it okay if I keep the gifts I couldn't give you as memories? They've become an important part of the room's decor.
Of course. And don't worry, I won't let the gifts pile up anymore because I'll be here every year to collect them.
Zoe's cheeky response made us all laugh until the last moment before we had to part ways. Since that day, our relationship has changed dramatically. Mary, how was your appointment today? I had started emailing Mary regularly, casually checking in on how she was doing.
The doctor said, I'm lucky to have such a wonderful family.
Her longtime psychiatrist seemed surprised at how much Mary had brightened up.
But I was reminded not to push myself too hard. Sudden changes can lead to emotional ups and downs.
That made sense. In the past, Mary would have kept something like the doctor's warning to herself. She would have only shared the good news to avoid burdening anyone. But now things are different. She had learned the importance of facing family openly, sharing both the good and the bad without hiding anything. Even if we shared everything, our family wouldn't break. We had discovered that we shared a strong bond that could withstand anything. Mary went to the doctor today. I told Kevin when he came home late one night, relaying what Mary had written.
Actually, she sent me the same message.
Really? I was surprised that she had included Kevin in the update as well.
Yeah, I asked her to tell me everything, because I'm pretty slow on picking up things on my own. And I told her if I misunderstood, I'd rather be corrected than left in the dark.
Kevin had regretted taking Mary's words about disliking children at face value, leading to 9 years of not bringing Zoe to her grandmother's house. It's not your fault. Being so open to everything is one of your best qualities. Mary had promised to share everything with her son from now on. The four of us had vowed to face the past and move forward together. You can't expect family to understand everything without saying a word. It's precisely because we're family that we need to trust each other enough to be open and vulnerable.
Grandma, I'm home.
Welcome back. Did you have fun at school?
Yeah. We had science today.
Zoe had become a total grandma's girl, video chatting with Mary every day after school. Having Mary as a strong supporter made me feel more at ease, allowing me to focus on work without worry. Since that day, visiting Mary's house once a month as a family had become a routine. Every time, Zoe brought an album showing Mary photos of her younger self.
This one's from when we went to the zoo for the first time. The goat bit my clothes, and I cried. And here, this is when I used a fork for the first time.
Mary gazed at the photos of Zoe as a baby, her eyes softening with emotion. The loneliness of those 9 years seemed to be gradually replaced by joy. I also had been filling in the gaps from those years, learning Mary's homemade recipes with each visit. I made Mary's famous hamburgers for dinner the other night.
How did they turn out?
Perfect. They were such a hit that I promised to make them again during the long weekend. Mary and I laughed together in the kitchen. I never imagined we'd have moments like this. The pain from the past, which I could never have overcome alone, was now healing thanks to the strong bond within our family. It wasn't just Mary, but I was too. Recently, I was able to remember one thing my late mom loved. It was the viola flower. When I brought home the potted violas I had grown in elementary school, my mom gave me a rare smile.
Mom, you like violas, don't you?
Yes, aren't they cute? Emily, violas suit you.
Really?
It was just a casual conversation. But I suddenly realized that I had been the kind of girl who suited my mom's favorite flowers. It made me think that my mom really did love me. At that moment, Zoe came into the kitchen.
Grandma, what's your favorite flower?
By coincidence, she had asked Mary the same question.
Go take a look at the flower bed. A bunch of them are blooming right now.
Mary smiled warmly.
Daddy, let's go see the flowers.
Zoe pulled Kevin along as they hurried out the front door. What kind of flowers does Mary like, I wonder? Curious, I followed them out to the garden.
Wow! So pretty.
In the flower bed, tiny purple violas swayed gently in the soft breeze.